Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Great. I bet it's full screen now. Okay, so let's get started. In today's presentation, we are going to talk about briefly about OpenAIRE, and I keep it simple just in case you're not familiar with our data, and then I will introduce the portfolio for snapshot access to data, namely the full graph dataset, the beginner's kit, and cloud access through BigQuery. Cloud access to the same set of data that you would get on the full graph dataset. We will not cover in this presentation the basic services such as OpenAIRE Explorer or the public APIs, and the reason for that will be clear in a few slides, but just bear with me for the moment. So as a recap, the OpenAIRE graph is a scientific knowledge graph, or SKG for short, of interlinked metadata about research products, be it publications, data, software, or other research products, each of which with connected access right information, and each of which link to funding information organizations, authors, and research communities that were involved in their production, and much more information about the context. So briefly, talking about rough figures, we do have millions of objects, almost 200 million of publications, data set, software funders, almost about 200 funders, 3 million funded grants, about half a million of organizations connected. And all these is collected, harvested from over 100,000 data sources. I'm admitting people to the room, by the way. And all these data points, metadata, are connected via semantic relations. And talking about core values of OpenAIRE and the OpenAIRE graph, is that we try to be as open as possible. Most of the data we have is CC0. We do have some sources that are under CC BY license. We strive to be as complete as possible by harvesting heterogeneous data sources and collecting information from many, many places. We deduplicate information, so to enforce that we do not have redundancy. So we try to put everything together and have the best view of a single object that can be described in many different places. We try to be transparent as possible, and all steps of our construction workflow the construction workflow that builds the graph, it's published in the documentation. There are no intentionally made black boxes, so we try to be as clear as possible. If there's something unclear, it's not by design, it's just documentation fault, but it can be improved. And therefore we are participatory. So if you have any suggestion, if you want to patch the data, there's always a chance to interact with us, and we do take care about suggestions coming from our users, and everything is decentralized, right? So information comes from very, very different places. Lots of different stakeholders can take part in discussion. And as a result, we are also trusted and trustable. We have been around for many years, and we hope to do so in the forthcoming future. And we are central in the European Open Science Cloud. So there's a lot of hype and trust going around our information. And every piece of information we have, by the way, is always attached with the information about trust score that provides an indication on how reliable the source or the algorithm that produced that or inferred that piece of information can be. The OpenAIRE graph powers a number of different services that I'm not covering those here in this presentation, but mostly the Explorer web portal for online searches, the APIs, all the dashboards and stats that we produce are all powered by the graph. And if you want to read further, you can go either to the documentation about the graph, here linked, or to the OpenAIRE main website. And especially on the graph documentation website, you will find plenty of information about the entities and relations that we model, how the data is constructed with all the details about the construction workflow and information about data access. So talking about provisioning pathways, we do have different, we do run things in different ways. So we have this construction workflow. I'm not going into details now, but mostly, I mean, all I want you to know is that we collect information from places, we put everything together, and we publish the data onto different channels. And we do this with different seasonality. On a monthly basis, we recreate the index that serves the web portal. We recompute all the stats that feed the dashboards and the public APIs. But on a semestral basis, we do three other things which are covered in this presentation. So the OpenAIRE Graph dataset, the beginner's kit, and cloud access. And we are doing that from this month in sync. So usually happens at the beginning of the year, so in January, and around summertime, unless something urgent is on the way and we really need to go for a yearly release. So you would ask why three different products here in this semestral cadence, and the reason is that we have a trilemma. So if you're not familiar with trilemma, is basically a dilemma with three different alternatives, and you're allowed to pick only two out of three. And three desirable properties to be complete. So the data that you want to access is complete, contains everything, and you can access data for free and in an easy way. And that would be the ideal, but that's the perfection is not for this world. So you are allowed only to pick two out of three. And if you pick free and complete, then you get the graph dataset. And this has been around for a couple of years on Zenodo. Then if you pick free and easy, you get the beginner's kit. And if you pick complete and easy, then you get the cloud access. This is in a snapshot, the portfolio. So what is the common factor between the graph dataset and the beginner's kit is that everything happens on local resources, so on your laptop, on your machines. What the commonality between the beginner's kit and the cloud access is that both rely on SQL as a language to access and query the data. And the commonality between the graph database and cloud access is that everything works on all the data we have. So there's no subset we rely on. So let's go now in a quick progression of the three products. First of all, the OpenAIRE Graph dataset, which, as I was saying, is on Zenodo every 6 months. You can see here, these are the stats, aggregated stats for all the versions. You can access back in time if you want all the snapshots. And you can even cite them formally using the DOI, so you can mention them all. Inside each snapshot, you will find a number of tar files, and each of which is, so it covers a certain portion, a certain entity of the graph: publication, dataset, software, other research products, organization, data sources, projects, relations, and communities. And this is the sheer total of the objects that we will find in the snapshot, in a given snapshot. And if you scroll down in the web page, you will see the list of files. So there are different part files because you couldn't possibly fit all the JSON raw files inside one archive. So for the sake of practicality, they are split into partitioned into different archives, and the total is a whopping amount of almost 300 gigabytes compressed. So this entails that this data set is suitable if you want to have full control on data and custom pre-processing, and only if you have technical skills to process raw JSON data files, and provided that you have adequate computational powers and storage, which means that you might have access to a server or a cluster or cloud computing of your own, and you have access to DBMS, GraphDB, or NoSQL databases of some kind. It's unsuitable if you're not comfortable getting your hands dirty with data processing, and is not suitable if everything you have at disposal is just a local machine. So we had to come up with different solutions, right? It was in a very favorable position, this one of having just the data set uploaded somewhere. It's not very usable. So this is how we started thinking about the beginner's kit. So the underlying idea is about getting familiar with data and tools on your local machine, cost-free, hassle-free, working on a small subset of data, and then scale up later. You can find the beginner's kit both on Zenodo and on GitHub. And the setup is really, really simple. You just have to run 2 commands. And what it does, it just create a Docker container that virtualizes a cluster on your laptop, on your machine, and it provides Jupyter Lab to play with the data through a Python notebook. I mean, it sounds complicated as an underlying technology, but all it does is basically this Python notebook. From the Python notebook, you can fetch the relevant subset of data, and then the boilerplate code just virtualizes the presence of a relational DB that you can query with something like SQL, if you're familiar with databases. And this is just an example. So you can, in this case, it's about counting citations of publications, and you see, like it's like you have tables which are not really there because you're in reality querying JSON files, and all this is transparent to you. You just see the querying language and virtual tables. And if you want to read further, you can check this paper that we presented at STI last year in Berlin, where we described the idea and lay down a few examples and possible things that can be done with the OpenAIRE Beginner's Kit. Just remember that a small subset. It's 6 months worth of publication of research products in general. So you cannot do possibly diachronic analysis out of it. But it's a good way to kick the tire, see what's in there, how the information is structured, and understand how to answer research questions. And the final bit is the cloud access. So what we decided to do is to give a try with Google BigQuery. And if you don't know, this technology, just a serverless data warehouse that provides tools for data ingress, egress, and streaming. It has an interface to Google Cloud Storage. It's really low maintenance cost, and you get charged mostly for doing queries. And As the beginner's kit, the interface is SQL-like. So you query the data through more or less standardized language, and everything happens in the cloud. So you have a web interface that this is horribly small. I'm sorry about that, but you have basically an editor where you can type down a query, and here on the left you have your data sets, so tables that you can query data from. And in this case, the data parking costs are covered by OpenAIRE. So we do have a public data set that we published on BigQuery, and that contains the graph as you saw, as you could access via Zenodo. So it's one-on-one, basically the same information. And the processing costs for querying are billed to individual projects accessing the data. So that would be the bit on users. So for every Google account, there's on the bright side, there are $300 as given for credit, just for trying for 3 months the product. And it's also possible to apply for research credits. I've been told that it's relatively easy to get a project statement approved. I don't know what is the amount of credits you get back, but it's a feasible pathway to test. And so BigQuery it's suitable for making a large amount of queries, and you can query terabytes of data, petabytes of data, and the first terabyte per month is for free, but then you get charged mostly, roughly $6 per terabyte of queries, and there is also a sandbox. So before activating the trial period, you can even activate. You can access BigQuery in a sandbox mode, where you basically have limited view on features, on BigQuery features, but you can start doing things for free, basically eroding this 3 terabyte of query processing that you have per month. So you could do things without even you could test things on BigQuery without providing any contact detail or a credit card, for that matter. So the way we place everything on BigQuery, it's follows a reproducible methodology. We basically always use Google Cloud solutions, but it happens through a virtual machine where we download everything from Zenodo, unzip everything, push all the JSON data onto kind of fake tables, which are just one column in JSON format, and then we extract everything to another database where every table has multiple columns, and every column is just for one bit of information. And this is how basically you move from what you see on the left here, which is the documentation page, to the schema on the right on BigQuery, where every field that you can find in the documentation can be found in a specific column. I said in brackets one-on-one because what I've tried to do here when mapping things is to make things as easy as possible. So in some cases where the information on the documentation is structured into multiple fields, I try to explode them into multiple columns whenever it was possible. But the naming is consistent. You can always tell what maps, what on the left maps onto the right. So that's you can use basically the same documentation to navigate yourself through the tables on BigQuery. And if you want to get started, there are a couple of pages you could read from the Google Cloud website. But basically, you need to create a new project, activate the free tier sandbox, or kickstart with your trial, providing a credit card, which is not charged at the beginning, fill in personal or company information, and then you can refer the public data set as OpenAIRE-graph.org v901, which is has been released last week, and I made it public like yesterday. And this is just like a small example where you count publication by year. So if you read the query out loud, it really matches the kind of the thinking flow of what you would do. But basically, you're extracting the year from publication date, you're counting publications from the table publications, grouping by year, where year is between certain range, and you order by year. And then you get, from the web interface, you get previewed the results. And here on the right, you see and this happens even before running the query. You see how much data will be shuffled by the query. In this case, it's 2 gigabytes. And if you remember the equation at the beginning, where $6 equates 1 terabyte, you pretty much get a sense on how much it's gonna cost. That's really, really handy. That's called dry run. So it basically, even before running that, Google provides you an estimate on how much data will be crunched. And as a note, the dialect of SQL that's used inside BigQuery is a bit different from the one that's provided by the beginner's kit. That cannot be, it doesn't depend on us. It's a technology related issue. We cannot do anything about it. Google re-implement things their own way. They have their own functions, their own library, so we cannot alter that. And but the differences are really, really minimal. So once you get confident from and with the dialect under the beginner's kit, it's really easy to translate all the acquired skills onto BigQuery and vice versa. So about as Elena was mentioning at the beginning, in October last year, there was an online training, and where that was held by Alison and me. Alison is from University of Campinas, and he helped me in that because he's not joining OpenAIRE, but I approached him because he has a great experience with Google Cloud. So we thought that could be a great way to work together, and we think that it was a good we delivered a good training, so you can access that on YouTube. And we basically covered this outline. The main intent was about familiarizing with Google BigQuery and running complex queries, increasingly complex queries, to gain proficiency. And the only caveat here is that the online training was about the OpenAIRE Graph version 8. So it has been dumped in summer 2024, while the one you have now, the version 9.0.1, has a few things that change ever since. So the queries that you can see on YouTube need a bit of adaptation in order to work on the new database. But stay tuned, because we could replicate the experience that we had in October. And in this case, OpenAIRE will cover the costs for the participants to the training. So it would be great for you, because you wouldn't pay a dime to access both the data and the processing and the computation engine. In terms of timeline, we are on a good way to get everything publicly announced. So basically, the Zenodo dataset has been recreated on BigQuery. We are in sync. So the dataset has been released, and I rewrote the training queries that were from October. We are updating the beginner's kit, which means to produce the data subset and update the Docker image. And then in the next days, we need to finalize the documentation on the documentation website, the one that was linked in the first section of these deck of slides. And we need to coordinate a public announcement for all the products, all the documentation with examples and a bit of guidance, especially for the Google BigQuery bit, to help you users to get going with this technology. Which, I mean, it's easy, but still it requires a bit of a head start in order not to get lost in all the configuration. And that would be all for today. So I hope I was on time. Yeah, half an hour. We're sharp. And so yeah, if you have any question, just come forward.
Great, thank you so much. We do actually already have one question in the Q&A. So the participant said, sorry, missed that part. Is the whole data set uploaded to BigQuery or just for the training data available? Or is just the training data available there?
The whole thing. The whole thing.
Great, thanks.
So is the same you get on Zenodo. What you get on Zenodo is what you get on BigQuery.
Beautiful, thanks so much. So for everybody else, please feel free again to write your questions either in the Google Doc that was sent in the chat. So that way, if we don't get to yours today, we can still answer you there. And then you can also ask any questions either here in the chat or in the Q&A, or even raise your hand. You a second to see if there's any burning questions. Yes, Birkin.
Yeah, thank you. So I don't see you now. I just see OpenAIRE on the on your screen. Yes. But you know, it's just one question. I'm kind of new to the OpenAIRE environment, so I'm actually working as within the European Commission, and we have some projects that are using the OpenAIRE. So I was a little bit late into the call, but we use Zenodo, and we have the OpenAIRE Graph. But maybe it might be just really a general question, or like a helicopter overview, if you were to give a kind of just a helicopter overview of OpenAIRE, because OpenAIRE itself, I imagine it has its own data sources. So Zenodo would be a data source, and you may have other data sources. So maybe if you could speak a little bit just in general terms about all the data sources that go into OpenAIRE, and then how the OpenAIRE graph then is either published or consumed, or you have many variants of the graph depending on the data source, or maybe it's just one graph for everybody. That's the bit that
No, so just a bird's eye view, as you were mentioning. So we collect data from over 100,000 of sources, which means that, I mean, yes, for sure, Zenodo is one of those, and but OpenAIRE has a long history of aggregation. So everything started from open access repositories. We do have other repositories for entities, and for example, for organization information about organizations, about grants, about researchers. So, for example, ORCID, Cordis for projects. So we We do collect from a plethora of different sources. The information we get is heterogeneous, and we get everything together. So what is important to know is that heterogeneous means that we make an effort to step away from traditional literatures only. So it's not only about literature; it's about open science, right? So we do have. We do collect information about research data, software, and other research products. So gray literature, presentations, all those kind of things. Moving to what you were mentioning, so we do present data in different ways. So the aggregation workflow is one, but then we have different materializations of our data, and we diversify the portfolio because the intended usage could be different, and we do that with different time frames. Like so, if you get the information you can get from the website or the APIs is always fresh because it's reharvested and reproduced every month. What you get from Zenodo, so the dump I was presenting here, what you get on BigQuery or the beginner's kit is instead recreated. It's the same. I mean, they are in sync, created in sync, but every 6 months. So it's a different seasonality. We do have partial dumps. We created partial dumps in the past, like one in 2020, we created something about COVID literature. We do have research communities dump. All of them are available on Zenodo for that matter. But so yeah, in short, we do target. So the collection workflow is one, the sources are a multitude, and we do materialize in our information in different ways based on the intended usage.
Okay, so I don't know if you're linking information. Yeah, that was clear. So you're kind of linking information from different data sets. Then you would have, like, say for instance, you mentioned ORCID and Cordis and Zenodo. So you would be able to, maybe there's an identifier, common identifier from one source and another source, and then you can aggregate those two or link them together.
Yeah, mostly. Yeah, mostly we do connect. We are able to connect. This publication has been published at the same time of this data set, and both were funded by this grant. These organizations were involved in the production of the two artifacts, and these people were participated, authored the publication. These other people authored the data set, and then we do have citational data. So this is, the kind of story that OpenAIRE can tell.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thanks. And I've also pasted in the chat where you can find about the aggregation more information about the aggregation part of the OpenAIRE Graph pipeline workflow. So there you have all the documentation, and of course that goes for the aggregation. And then there's also the merging by IDs and the PIDs, more information on that as well.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Let's see. Else. Questions? We did have a couple not so much questions, but I think people that just wanted maybe some clarification or more information on in the registration form. We had somebody commented research informatics. So if there's anything that we wanted to share on that, if that person's here and they wanted to give a little bit more on what they would like to know about research informatics. And if not, maybe we could just give a general overview. Is there anything from our side that we'd like to say? Research informatics?
I don't know. I mean, it's not clear what
Sorry.
was asked.
I'm not sure if the person
no, I
here
mean,
in the registration form,
I mean,
it was just...
For the other point, I see SDG classification. That's clear, but so it's not a part I'm currently taking care of. But if I remember correctly, there should be a section on the documentation that talks about that. And it's so let me see if I can fetch it. And in any case, just I just wanted to reinforce on the message that there's no. I mean, we don't have any intention to keep to not disclose bits on how the graph is constructed. So yeah, about SDGs and how they are populated in our data, that I just copy pasted the link in the chat.
And we do have a question in the Zoom Q&A. Is there any study of comparison with WS, I'm assuming Web of Science, and OpenAIRE data? If I look for citation count of a researcher in both Web of Science and OpenAIRE, is there much difference or will it be about the same?
So for these kind of studies usually pertain to the centrometrics community, bibliometrics community, and which is a community that we started to target only recently, I would say. I mean, since 2019. So it's let's say later than if you compare it to other sources. And so I think that we start to see now the first in the last couple of years, perhaps, the first studies that are trying to compare the information that's inside OpenAIRE and the other sources. For example, in November, I think I had a Japanese PhD student visiting, and we were thinking to compare DCI, so the Data Citation Index from Web of Science, and what is contained in OpenAIRE. That's something that no one ever analyzed before. I'm not aware of comparisons between Web of Science and OpenAIRE at the moment. Not that I've seen. I know that there's other researchers trying to compare OpenAIRE with other sources, but not Web of Science nor Scopus.
Thank you. So I did want to share, so as Andrea mentioned, we'll be looking to recreate the training that we had in October. So if you are interested in that, and also just staying up to date with anything else that will be coming out, because we're also working on a full OpenAIRE Graph course that will go through the data model, everything, BigQuery, and everything, all comprehensive, one course online. We're working on creating that now. So of course, if you want to be in the know once it goes live, I'm just sharing a couple links of where you can find information. So on the Graph website, on the very bottom, you have the subscribe to newsletter, and we're working on creating a quarterly newsletter. So we won't spam you, just on any big updates anything that's going on with the graph there. And then of course, announcements for trainings and everything. And again, that will be quarterly. And then otherwise, for more real in-time updates and developments, we have the graph Twitter, which I'm just copy and pasting all those links now. And then of course, as many are moving away from Twitter, we've also recently created a Blue Sky and Mastodon as well account, just to try and be there to give you all the information you need. So I'm just pasting all of those links now, so you can go and find us there for real-time live updates and everything. And then on that note as well, just yesterday we announced that the new OpenAIRE Graph API have been released. We've been working on those for those who follow the community calls. We did have a call in October where we went over the beta testing phase. We had the beta testing phase, which took place last summer. And the new APIs are now officially out. So first I'm pasting all the links where you can have those updates if you want to participate in those trainings, get those materials. And then if you're interested just to learn more about the new APIs, I'll share that information here now. We have an article which just kind of gives a general overview, and then of course the documentation. And really encourage you to go through the documentation. Have a lot of information there, so that will show you, how you can use the API and yeah, get started on using those and taking advantage of the graph's data. So I'll send those there now as well. See if we have any other questions.
I just saw that the second part of was on the last question was about citation count and whether that could be different or exactly the same. So I think that exactly the same. I mean, that could happen, but is not a feature that would expect most of the times. And I mean, that's fine. It's the same thing like when you the research evaluation is really source selection dependent. So if you move from Web of Science to Scopus, you get different results. It's seldom that you get exactly the same count. And it's the same thing if you go to OpenAlyx or to OpenAIRE. The representation of citations might be different, and especially in OpenAIRE because we do have products that go beyond publications, and we do have software data and other research products. So that possibly could alter the number of links that are incoming into a publication. So that was just an addendum to the last bit of the question.
Thank you. All right, if we don't have anything else, we can wrap it up there. We'll elaborate on, put all the questions in the Google Doc, and stay tuned as well for the next graph call, which we're going to go over a use case, which might be interesting because we're always talking about the back end, and now let's look at applications and everything. So in the next call, we're actually going to be looking at the National Open Access Monitor, which is a national case of using the graph data. We've created a monitor dashboard, well, larger than a monitor dashboard, a whole platform for them to monitor the country's open access uptake, research outputs, and everything. So we'll be presenting that case in the next call, which will be March 19th. So you can, if you signed up to register for that, if not, it's the same registration link. And with that, we'll leave you all to enjoy the rest of your day, and we will send out an email with a recording of the session and as well as the slides to look back on. And thank you so much. See you all soon.
Thank
Bye.
you.